We're live.
I would like to call this special meeting of the Board of Education Curriculum Committee to order. The next special meeting of the Board of Education Curriculum meeting is on Thursday, February 26 at 8:30 a.m. To start out with the committee elections, I would like to nominate Sarah Parent for chair of the Curriculum Committee. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Greg is second. Are there any other nominations? Okay, there are no other nominations. All those in favor of electing Sarah Parent for the position of chair of the Curriculum Committee, please indicate by raising your hand. That is unanimous. Congratulations, Sarah, and now we will resume the meeting.
Good morning, and thank you, everybody. Well, thank you for being here. We are excited today to get a math update and a literacy update from our colleagues across the table. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Fettigan. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Today we have, as Ms. Parent indicated, 2 updates for you. We are right around the corner to begin course selection, actually at the middle school. So it's really timely that we're talking about our math courses today. And Mrs. Rodier has some good data for us, including the most probably important data, actual kids and how they're performing in a classroom. Sometimes we learn the most by hearing what children say as they're processing their learning. And we'll be talking about our efforts to really make sure that all children that are in advanced courses in mathematics in middle school have access to really rigorous experience, because part of what we're doing is wanting to support the transition from 8th grade to 9th grade to make sure that it's not so steep. So she'll be talking about that, and then we'll transition to literacy after that. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Ronnie Rodier. I have the honor of serving as the math chair for grades 6 through 12 for the district. I want to start by thanking Dr. Byrne and Dr. Fettigan for the opportunity today and have the platform to just talk about math. So thank you very much for that. Our focus today will be on the algebra experience at Middlesex Middle School. Before we begin, I thought I'd throw it out and ask you to take a moment to reflect on your own math journey. When did you take Algebra 1? Do you remember anything about that experience? Maybe how it was taught, how you felt, what it represented academically? Do you have a memory that stands out for you?
So I will say that I had to text a few few peers from 8th grade and say, when did we take this class? And we think it was 8th grade, but no one could really remember. So obviously I don't have a memory that stood out because it was not very robust. So.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I remember mine was definitely in 8th grade because my mother was a teacher at the school and taught 8th grade algebra, and I had to specifically request to switch out of her class. I don't think she's forgiven me.
I don't remember.
That's okay.
I remember the crazy super high level math I took in college, but I can't remember when exactly I took Algebra 1.
I understand. Anybody else? Well, for me personally, when I reflect back and I think about algebra, I think about the fact that I had to repeat it. I took it in 8th grade, and then I repeated it again in 9th grade. And I think my foundation was so strong in algebra by the time I exited. I do believe that's the reason I was so successful in mathematics and why I studied it in college, because I was able to retrieve so much of those foundational skills in Algebra 1. For many of us, algebra was a gatekeeper. It's the point where math shifts. It's more abstract, it's more symbolic, it's faster paced. And historically, when and how students took algebra actually mattered a lot. It kind of set their trajectory. So this context is important because the way algebra functions today, especially at the middle school, has changed over time. Before we talk structures and pathways, I want to ground us in what math instruction actually looks like today in many of our classrooms. And as you watch the video, perhaps just using a lens in terms of how, if a memory does come back to you, how it may look different than our own experiences or what resonates with you.
So now, okay, so Joe, that's great. What's the connection with the positive two in the equation? Oh, interesting. You're fast, right? What did you want? So you chose a root and then did synthetic. Good. Did anyone try anything else? What were y'all saying? You want what is that?
Absolutely. There's lots of things. You're swimming on stage, you're swimming, you're swimming, so there's time. And to 17 days, becomes, I'm gonna show you athletes in action. On a track. It's a 400-meter race. Does anybody know how many laps that is? No, that's like, no, it's like half. One, it is one lap. Okay, so do you know how long around the track that is in terms of miles? You know, like if you run around the track, the time, do you know what that is? A quarter of a mile. It's a quarter of a mile. Does anybody have a guess how fast these guys are going? How fast would you think run around this track? How fast would you know how fast? I mean, like, we don't know. Let's see. Like, so we have like something in the game. What do we think? 1 second. 1 second. You want all the way around the track. There you go. We're inside that. I said 40. You said 40. I said really. Yes, you said that was the top. It's best. Why did they stagger? Do you see that they're not all lined up? Like, why did they stagger that? Do you know what it is? It's inside, it like isn't quite as far west, right? So why? So they pull that person farther back, right? Do they all look right as consistent? Yes, because it's staggered, right? So here's what I'm wondering. Alright, go to your rooms, please. Go find your board, That's around the perimeter of the track below.
Okay, so you're finding that, so we're trying to say something, we usually add this, but when you write track, you wouldn't have the 2 lines, you would add the 2 lines over there, right? So I don't think it's the same, I don't think we have to add these, the sides there, right? So you do find that, I think we're trying to, and then, so like, up here, actually, that actually multiplies, because you would like count that as a track. We're trying to figure out. So this number here, so let's just say that we have that right. Okay, but I think because it's if we said first we found the area, but then we realized we had to find out further on the track, and so then we went back and we did the 100.4 is true, then we added the 200 because that's the 0.96. They might like cut it off early. I'm wondering how specific it has to be. That's what I wonder.
Down that they feel like they can explain what they did in a way that other people in the room would understand. Your job.
So basically the track, it split the lines, these times. You say this is a rectangle, it's like a circle, makes one circle. So you got mine, so the rectangle.
Where usually it's about 2 or 3 of us in a group, and so you get to collaborate with the other students and try and see the real world application of a lot of the math that we're using. For example, we've optimized the volume of dumpsters and optimized energy output from a hydroelectric plant. And it's just kind of seeing where this math really comes in the real world and being inspired by other students' ideas, which can push me further and expand my thinking on the subject that I think has been the most rewarding opportunity.
I mean, I really like it because it it helps me focus more because if I'm just sitting at my desk while doing anything, yeah, it doesn't help me concentrate. I always drift out and think about something else.
Yeah, I like how she starts off with a question that like gets us thinking that we don't have already learned,
Yes, it's new.
then it helps us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks guys for letting me know. High five.
Yeah.
All right, competition.
Any comments or observations?
It was a really active classroom across all, all those scenes. Everyone was engaged and active, which is great.
Anything else?
Yeah, that's not what my math class looked like. It was very much like everyone sitting in their rows, the teacher explaining concepts and working problems. I don't really ever remember doing any group work in math. And I certainly don't remember discussing the real world implications and of concepts and problem solving.
Yeah. I think that's my experience and memory too. And certainly we have plenty of classes where students are sitting in rows listening to the teacher delivering instruction. This isn't happening 100% of the time in all classes, but math discourse is really, really important. And so what you saw in that video reflects our instructional practices: problem solving, problem-based learning, student discourse, multiple entry points of, you might have noticed how there was one group that was attacking the problem by using a picture. There was another group that went right to the mathematics. And thinking tasks in math are really designed today with a low floor, high ceiling. So what that means in mathematics is a low floor in the video that you saw on that problem with the track would be really focused. Everyone should be able to focus on the perimeter, at least of the straight part of the track. That's an entry point that all students can have. And for the students that are ready for more and was able to figure out the perimeter of the track pretty quickly, the high ceiling could be, well, what's the general formula for any track that shape? And that's where X comes in. So when we're thinking about the math experience, especially in the 8th grade, this matters because algebra in 8th grade is accelerated. And today it's not just about moving faster, it's about supporting deeper thinking at a faster pace. And that's really the pivot. With that instructional lens in mind, when you look at the pathways that we have here, math is the only subject where actually it looks like this in middle school, where they're entering 6th grade and they have 3 pathways. But they do have plenty of opportunities for acceleration, support, and flexibility along the way. This path is not linear. For some students it is, and for some students it isn't. I do want to mention, especially with Shirley by my side, that importantly, we do also offer modified curriculum through the special education department at every grade level for any student that needs it, ensuring access and support for all learners. But I'd like us to focus on the 8th grade column where you see our algebra classes and ask you, what % of the 8th grade class do you think is in that accelerated pathway?
You mean taking the geometry?
That are taking algebra in 8th grade. And at that blue bar, that middle bar, whether it's in one of those 2 classes, the total amount of students that are having an algebra experience in 8th grade, what %?
60%.
So actually it teeters around 50%. It's been growing each year. This current year, we have 54% in there. So that accelerated pathway prepares students for algebra in grade 8 if they stay on that pathway, and ultimately for advanced coursework at the high school. So if you look at the pathway here, whether they're in Algebra 8 or accelerated algebra, those are the 2 courses we offer today in that 8th grade. the majority of our students do take calculus and they end up taking calculus in the 12th grade. But we have students, to be honest, that do all sorts of things. They repeat, they may double up in calculus and statistics. The way they move throughout math really is about readiness, and math does get harder as you go on with the levels in math. So as we look at the data together, there's something to notice about algebra across the DIRG. When we look at DIRG A districts, every other middle school offers one algebra experience in grade 8. Darien's the only district that is offering 2. And at the core, this presentation is really just about strengthening the algebra experience for all students and guaranteeing that experience is the same. So this work is really grounded in the principles of universal design for learning, designing instruction from the start. So students have multiple ways to access content, engage in the learning, and demonstrate their understanding. So beginning in the 26-27 school year, we'll be offering one algebra course in 8th grade moving forward, sustaining excellence that's expected with the strongest foundation possible. And here's our rationale. First of all, students who are taking algebra in 8th grade, regardless of the name of the course, they are in an accelerated pathway. It is naturally accelerated. They are 1 year above grade level by definition. Second, algebra and the accelerated algebra actually cover the same units of study currently. The difference is really just the pace and the depth and some of the experiences that the students have in terms of expectations. Our data at the high school shows that students who level up later often struggle less about the mathematics, and it's more about actually the habits. And the increase in the rigor and the pace is something that many of our high school students can struggle with. So by collapsing it, we can intentionally teach that all students are receiving those academic habits, study skills, the mathematical stamina, and the productive struggle that you saw when the students were up at the board in the video. Rather than separating students into different algebra courses, we're just really focused, again, on all students having the strongest algebra program that we offer. And importantly, just so you know, we have lots of work and structures in place. We have dedicated curriculum hours focused on differentiation. We have ongoing professional learning for teachers. We have clear and transparent placement criteria to move on to honors at the high school. We do have a waiver process. Students are not locked into a single path in math. They can slow down if needed, like I did. They can still accelerate later if they're ready. And families continue to have clear, accessible information about math pathways on the website, which I update regularly. And also the curriculum for all math courses are available to be seen on EduPlanet. Thank you.
So I guess my first question is, how many students currently are separated into that algebra and then the advanced algebra?
So the Algebra 8 that we currently offer is our smallest enrollment. The number of students is 57, which represents about 17% of the 8th grade class.
Okay, so and then the accelerated algebra is,
The accelerated algebra, we have 120 students, which is 57% of the class.
okay. So,
37,
I'm
excuse
just
me,
thinking
37.
of parents, reactions to this as things change.
Yeah.
So those that are, needing a little more push and needing a little more challenge will get differentiation in the classroom, as well as those that, maybe need a little more support. Is that the goal here?
Yes, absolutely. That low floor, high ceiling example that I gave you would be an example of how we would differentiate in mathematics. And that's a focus that we have had in all of our classes, 6-12, but at middle school, it's really, really important that all students, because they develop at such a fast rate, where they start is in math is not where they end up.
Right. My question, Katie, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to talk about both of those things. I think let's stay on the placement. So I appreciate your presentation and it really makes sense to me. And I can even say from like a personal adult perspective, you know, the foundation of algebra that you're talking about is so important. I mean, I recently took a statistics class in grad school and you know, the prerequisite and the prep for that was like, hey, if it's been a while since you've like practiced your algebra, here's, you know, and it's amazing. Like I took that class and I remembered all those things, but they also weren't things that I could have just like spout off the top of my head, right? So it really is foundational. So I appreciate you talking about that. And I appreciate us really being thoughtful about making sure that our students are very, very solid in that. As you're giving us the numbers though, and just to make sure that I understand this, if we currently have 57 and 17% of our students taking Algebra 8, and we have more than double that taking the accelerated algebra, and I'm assuming that they're being successful in that.
Well, one of the things that, when you say, are they being successful, do you mean that are we successful with what we currently have? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, in those classes, those kids are appropriately placed. They're getting the benchmarks, they're retaining their.
For the majority of students, they are appropriately placed. There are some that accelerate too quickly and they do need to repeat algebra.
Okay, so how do we sort of say that we're kind of taking away that class from those 120 students?
We're not taking anything away. It's Algebra 1. Both classes are Algebra 1. What I would argue that those students are going to be exposed to what really more the habits, the pace, they'll be differentiated, they will be supported in the same way they're being supported now, but they're just going to be exposed to a different pace and rigor that they will rise or identify some gaps that we need to support within that class.
So what does that mean then for the teachers where right now we have a natural differentiation where there's it's the same content, but it's a faster pace. So those students are already grouped naturally and conceivably they're all on that faster pace. So what will that mean for teachers now to have those 57 and those 120 mixed together?
I've talked to the 8th grade teachers about it. They definitely are ready to work on looking at the accelerated curriculum that we have in place and making sure that the differentiated opportunities are there for every single piece of content that we have. And right now, it's not every single piece of content, and that's the work that we need to do, but it's something that we've been working on all year.
And then can you also, can you also please just talk about what the change in their course placement from 8th to 9th looks like?
Sure. So right now, the way that it works is the majority of students who are in that Algebra 8 course, they either repeat algebra in the high school or they go on and take geometry at the 300 level. The accelerated algebra students will either, there are cases where they repeat algebra because they just wanted to stay in the accelerated track at middle school for whatever reason. I have students who, majority of students, well, actually it's changing now that we just switched over to honors geometry, but it's split. We have students who go into geometry 300. It just depends on the balance of their schedule. But there's qualifications from accelerated algebra that they need to meet. Those aren't changing. It would be when we have this one algebra course, it would still be the same. They would still need the B+ from this course at a minimum, a teacher recommendation. They need a SBAC score of 4. They need a midterm score of B+ or higher, and they need their first semester grade to be a B+ or higher, and their second semester grade to be a B+ or higher. All of that are the criteria to get into honors geometry, and that would stay the same.
I'm trying to think about like, when you say faster pace, like what are can you just give some examples of like what you mean by how is, you saying like it's both Algebra 1, so the overall curriculum is the same.
Yes.
So for the student who is in the lower level algebra versus the accelerator or whatever, how is that student, like, what's gonna change? Is it gonna be more stuff earlier? And then like what happens at the end? Like, are they done with the content? Like, how does that work? I'm trying to
So
like
we're going to
understand,
go
like,
into,
what that-
yeah, that's fair. The accelerated algebra courses just go into, if the opportunity arises, depending on the students and their readiness in front of them, they go into further depth. To keep things simple, if you were to consider the track problem, it's possible that we just stop and that our focus perhaps for a regular Algebra 8 would be just the idea of figuring out the perimeter of curved sides, and that's fine. But in the accelerated course, we're really looking for any track and adding that X in, or maybe giving them stronger numbers. But the idea is that all students are exposed to that problem, and we're still supporting those students, that their job is just to figure out the perimeter, and that's okay where they are. The algebra experience, it's such a gatekeeper, and they really, their readiness changes throughout the year. You can have a student who they're entering 8th grade mathematically where they are okay. And then all of a sudden they thrive later. We do have movement right now between the two courses, and that doesn't feel good. When a student is in accelerated algebra and they move down to algebra 1, it feels like they're moving down a level, and it's not. It's still algebra. They shouldn't feel that way. We really need to be able to support at the middle school one experience in algebra 1. It's good data to see where are all these students falling, and are we putting them in the proper place at the high school? Because the feedback we receive from students at the high schools, especially when they're going from middle school to high school, is that if they go into honors courses, and it could be because they're taking the balance of their schedule, but they are overwhelmed, like they've never been exposed to it before. So you could have a student, for example, that their first honors experience is at the high school. And they're like, whoa, I had A's before. I didn't know that this is what I needed to do. Students at middle school, the way they develop and the way they grow is fast. And it's like this.
So I'm curious about the nomenclature. Why, if you're having one algebra class, why are you calling it advanced algebra instead of algebra?
I don't care what we call it. I really don't. The names have changed over time. We used to call it 1, 2, 3, then we called it accelerated. Now I'm saying advanced to let families understand that if they are in algebra in 8th grade, you are accelerating your student. There are expectations here. You don't have to accelerate. It's okay to stay on grade level. There's balance of being completely transparent with the public. We want them to understand that being in algebra in 8th grade is an advanced way to go, is an accelerated pathway. What we call it, I'm indifferent to. I'm trying to be transparent and clear, but also not confusing. The math pathways it can be overwhelming for parents.
Agreed. And I understand that, and I don't necessarily have an issue
Yeah.
with the name of it, but I
Yeah.
am curious if there are students that then go back to repeat algebra in freshman year.
Mhm.
That was just what we were saying, like you're going from advanced algebra and then you're going to the high school and you're taking algebra. Does that matter? I don't know.
I don't think so, only because at the high school, listen, the grades count.
Yeah.
And they're receiving credit for it for the first time. And at the high school, they tend to focus less on the name and just the opposite, more on the level. At the high school, they're like, are you in the 300 or the 400 or the AP? That's what, it's less
Okay.
about the name.
Tess, I'm sorry, could you put this one up? So I just want to talk about the courses a little bit more, kind of. So, thank you. So what we're talking about is collapsing that middle green into Algebra 8.
Advanced algebra.
Advanced.
Well,
I
right,
think.
sorry, the name, but a
Yes,
single algebra
a
class.
single
for
algebra
8th grade.
class. Yes.
Yes. So then, and the geometry would remain.
Yes.
So this is an important distinction then, is that it's not that the that the single algebra in eighth grade is the only option. There is still a faster pace there.
Oh, absolutely. And we don't have,
Yes.
we don't have any, if, this is a good screen to show because we don't have any other levels anywhere else. It almost, it just doesn't make
Yes.
sense. It's not appropriate.
Yes, this is helping me quite a bit because I think
Yeah.
I got a bit stuck on that 120.
Got it.
Right, but it's not that they've maxed out and are
Right.
going down. They're still, so then
Right.
students who are taking algebra 7,
Mm-hmm.
like if they were to stay on the same track, their natural thing is then take geometry in eighth grade.
Yes, we do have students that accelerate too quickly, or they were ready in sixth grade and perhaps no longer can handle that pace. You know, math does get harder. So algebra 7, there really should be arrows everywhere. So sometime, the majority of students from algebra 7 absolutely go to algebra 8. We have had students who repeat it in eighth grade. Very
So
few.
They go from algebra 7 to algebra 8.
They just repeat it. They repeat the algebra.
So can you talk a little bit about that? Like if a student was even in the next year, right? Like
Mhm.
how is algebra 7 going to be different from algebra 8?
It's a good question, but I want to preface it with, we're talking about a handful of students.
Okay.
Like this is very, very
So
few.
that's kind of an individualized, like you would
Yes.
benefit from this. This is what they're comfortable with, as opposed to a
Absolutely,
big cohort just doing the exact same thing for a year.
absolutely. And algebra set, that low pre-algebra and that algebra 7 geometry are for students who are double accelerated. They're in sixth grade, they're doing 3 years of content in 1 year.
Right. So that all remains. This is
That all
really
remains.
just about collapsing a subset within.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
That's, thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
so-
is confusing. Thank you, though.
So looking at the, there's like 2 pages later, so there's algebra 7 in seventh grade. There will be algebra, advanced algebra 8 in eighth grade, and algebra in ninth grade. Are those all basically going to be the identical? Those all, I mean, it's all an algebra.
So you're looking at the screen with the picture with a lot of arrows?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. No, they actually aren't the same because the students, if we just go to algebra 7, where it's the yellow in grade 7, that algebra, the depth within the content area is different because you are dealing with doubly accelerated kids. These are students, if they were to stay on the pathway, make it all the way to multivariable calculus. This algebra foundation, is in greater depth than the eighth grade algebra, and the eighth grade algebra is in greater depth than the ninth grade algebra.
Is the seventh grade algebra, which I understand you're describing really more the students and the ability to take on that level of depth. And I guess that goes along.
The curriculum goes into more depth.
That applies to them. But there was, when there was, I don't remember what it was called, but the advanced algebra, accelerated
Yeah.
algebra, is that not the same pace as what is being done in seventh grade?
No, I wouldn't say that the pace is a little bit faster in seventh grade. And when we talk about pace, I don't want the idea to be that in seventh grade, you're taking 15 units and in eighth grade, you're taking 10. It's all the same units across the board for algebra. The pace is greater because the depth is greater. You're covering more content within that one unit because those students are double accelerated. They can handle it.
So those 3 algebra courses are not the content, a
A lot of the content overlaps because they're the same
tons of
units.
overlap,
Yeah.
but just the depth of coverage is different.
That's exactly right.
So do you anticipate any changes because of this at the high school? Doesn't seem that way, but.
I'm hopeful that students will be making the best choices for their high school schedule since all students now have been exposed. Math is the only place they're going to see a real honors class, an accelerated course. So perhaps when they're choosing their schedule at the high school, they'll be choosing it with balance in mind because they're like, wow, can we handle 6 accelerated, or advanced courses in my high school schedule because they're all going to have this pace and rigor. So maybe it will impact that in a positive way.
One more question about pathways, and Cass, I'm so sorry, but would you mind putting that one back? Thank you. So I just want to talk about the pathways, and I so appreciate Ronnie, you talking about the growth of middle school in general, right? These kids are coming from elementary, they're 12 years old, 11, right? They're 11, and then they're like leaving at like 14, right? There's a huge difference here. So I want to talk about the adjustments from going to, a single classroom model to a team model. And I want to talk about, just the massive change in content here. So how do we make sure that, especially given, even looking at like that collapsed eighth grade algebra, how do we make sure that students are being identified as ready to move on, specifically as it relates to not skipping pre-algebra? Because if you were to go from, let's say that you were in like math 6 and math 7, and then you went to move up, you're missing an entire kind of content grade that really prepares you for those algebra foundations. So what do we need to look at in order to make sure that students are able to get that ability to have that flexibility in a pathway?
Thank you for asking. So, and it really is a great question. So I think that I would like to say that we don't allow anyone to skip algebra because it's so foundational within the district. So know that. So Algebra 1 needs to be taken with us, whether it's in 7th, 8th, or 9th grade. But we do allow movement in other places. So to your point, if they went from Math 7 to Algebra 8, summer work is really required. That summer work is posted on my website and is checked to make sure that they do it. In addition to doing, and I probably should rephrase that as summer math practice, which is so much fun. In addition to that, I offer 2 placement testing dates, one in June and the other in August. That is also posted on my website. Parents have the ability to fill out the form for their child. And students get tested, and I give parents that feedback. Hey, here's what their readiness is showing, that they know these skills, or it looks like we might want to reconsider, them jumping from Math 7 to Algebra 8 because it doesn't look like they're ready, even though we thought they might be ready. So there is testing in order for students, and in middle school, it's a recommendation. So it's a moment in time. It's one data point. So on this test, it doesn't look like they're ready. We try it, we watch, we see. There's a lot of testing in math. Within the first week of school, and every single one of those courses you see on the board, they all take a test the first week to make sure and ensure that they are in the right place. How do they compare with their peers? What is this data showing us? Where are their gaps? And then we watch and we look and we discuss and we move kids appropriately.
I've had experience with that personally with both of my children, and the identification. I mean, I feel like I was in constant contact with Mrs. Michael, who was, she did a lot of work with one of my children over the summer, and it was, she was identified in like February or March, and she was like, this kid's ready to move to a different level. And I do feel like the teachers really have a great sense of where students are, whether they're too far or they're not challenged enough. And
So I had a similar experience. Both of my kids also in middle school started on a different path and grew, which is amazing. Like that is what we want for kids, right? To be able to grow and the confidence that comes with that. However, for both of them, it was really self-driven. And I think one perhaps probably should have been pushed a little earlier, which I'm not faulting anyone for. I'm just asking, how do we know that the parents will show up and they will sign their kids up for accelerated courses and they will sign waivers. How do we make sure that our teachers are having that conversation, not just at that first week to make sure that they're starting great in 6th grade where they need to be, but, as that progression happens in 6th grades and the kids have really matured and they settled into it, how do we then, be intentional about saying, everyone's going to look back at their top performers in their class and question if they should push up, before we make those schedules for 7th grade.
I like to think that we do a very good job communicating and watching students. I mean, we meet weekly at the middle school talking about students and where they are and looking at data and looking at student work. We do that every single week. I'm copied on all communication typically, that the teachers are, if there's a concern in terms of placement. So I think that communication, I would like to think is happening, but certainly I would also like to just say that they, especially at the middle school level, it's totally okay as a parent, especially anyone watching this, to reach out as well. You know, and if you're not hearing and getting lots of communication from the teacher outside of just grades, you know, how that student's doing from the team, from their math class, I would say to be an advocate as well and consider reaching out. Because the teachers, we want everyone to have a good experience at middle school in math. That's the goal. We want them learning math, but we also want them positive and confident about it. So because math gets hard. So we want to make sure that they are going in with the most amount of confidence as possible. And we really are looking at the whole child when they're in math class, especially in middle school.
I'm so glad that you're talking about the whole child because your question is an excellent one. And this is why the shift from SRBI to MTSS is so important because it's about looking at the whole child and every child and not, you know, with RTI and SRBI previously, it was more looking at children that required interventions because they were not yet at grade level. So your question is an excellent one. MTSS is having us look at every child and ensure that we have progress monitoring and benchmarking happening. And that's why, you know, Ronnie and Kristen were both here when we were talking about MTSS earlier in the year. And I've often given the example of when children outgrow their shoes, right? And developmentally, that's a big deal cognitively for our adolescents in middle school. You know, you think they're here and then sometimes they have a growth spurt overnight. It's the same thing with their academics. So we want to make sure we're not losing time and we're giving them the just right fit and stretching them just a bit each time.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. And I think that the work that you're doing might prevent like a little bit of maybe what happened to one of my children as well, in that you know, when there is another component at play, like let's say an executive functioning piece, right, where kids aren't turning their homework in, they're doing it in their concepts. So maybe they're not at that top performer, but they can handle it, right? And then I just wanted to say, you know, to plug the work that Shirley's doing as well, that for a child who might have, you know, more difficulty in a language-based class, right? That a lot of times those kids have really high performance in math. And that is a huge confidence, right? To, if you're struggling a little bit with like your spelling and your vocabulary, you know, but you're able to really succeed in math. I think that like those are the things that are really great for kids as learners. So thank you.
It's also really important that we're looking at professional learning communities, those PLCs, because that provides the teachers with the concrete opportunity to be consistently looking at that data so we can move as soon as, you know, we see it that the child is at point of readiness.
I want to be conscious that Mr. Don's on Zoom. John, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, just in terms of optics, have we thought about this and how to communicate this more broadly in a succinct message, right? So there's a lot of nuance to this presentation and the different levels, but at the end of the day, the takeaway could be, rightfully or wrongly, that the middle school is getting rid of an advanced math course, right? And that could potentially send a message that, you know, we're not aspiring for the academic excellence, we're kind of taking something away. So how do we navigate that when this kind of gets implemented?
I agree. That's an important piece of this.
I think it's, yeah, I agree with you. I think it's important. So I guess we're going to have to call it Advanced Algebra 8, and it will be for all. So everyone is clear that it is an advanced pathway. We already have Advanced Math 6, so it's consistent across. So I think that makes the most sense. Also, just a little plug for myself. I am doing an 8th to 9th grade math transition night, and that is January 21st at 7 p.m. And that will be online. Obviously, this is not being implemented to next year, but I don't anticipate that this math night will discontinue. So this will be another opportunity next year to make sure that all parents are invited. It will be recorded. It will be posted on the website where we're really just focused on the 8th to 9th. So it's a little less overwhelming because I know that you're looking 6-12 right now. In addition to that, all the eighth grade math teachers do a presentation about the eighth to ninth grade transition and what the options are and the criteria and what they're looking at. They speak to students. I do feel that communication is pretty strong regarding placement, but I will be 1000% transparent and as active as I can be in my capacity to share that advanced algebra exists at Middlesex, and we have many students that find success in our accelerated pathway.
And
I
we
think-
can.
Yeah, I think the angle has got to be right. We're fine tuning our advanced algebra program, right? Because like a simple headline for this is going to be like we're cutting an advanced course. So just kind of way to navigate around that.
Well, and that geometry remains.
And being really intentional in our communication during course selection will be really important.
And I think it's the current seventh grade parents that
It
are going,
is.
you're going to have to make this very clear. And I do think that the visual with the colors makes a lot of sense, that you're still, your kids are still accelerating.
It's really the seventh grade group.
Yeah.
I appreciate all the advice. Thank you.
Also, to the slide with the other districts that don't have this, right,
Yeah.
is where the standout. I think that's probably something of note to emphasize too.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ronnie.
Thanks.
All right, we will
Thanks so
move
much, Mom.
on to literacy.
Okay. So we, as you know, at this table talk about literacy a lot. And at the very beginning of our work in PK3 literacy, you heard me say many times, this is not just because of the right to read legislation, that we believe in continuous improvement. We recognize there are things that we could and should be doing differently, things that we should be doing better in district. And it's not just about K3, it's really thinking about how do we create a systemic approach to literacy instruction in the district. And so one of the things, as Dr. Falcone came into the district, I was saying with both Dr. Falcone and Kristen Colonies is we really need to be thinking about a continuum. As children move through and they grow through the system as literate readers and writers and communicators, how do we support their growth? And so we knew right from the beginning that we would be thinking again, not just K3, but PK. We have a strong ELP program and our children come in with pre-literacy skills. And certainly we don't want to now just ask the question, what happens in 4th and 5th grade? We want to be thinking bigger picture than that. So one of the things that we want to just always remind everyone is about the vision and the mission of a school system. And really this is about not just teaching children how to read, but how to think. And we want children to love to read and to be curious about the world around them and what they can learn through books and where books can take them to new and exciting places. So as we approach our continued work in district in the area of literacy, I want to talk about just these district strategic priorities. And this is again, so that we sustain the work, it's systemic and coherent across all schools and across all levels. So we'll be talking about throughout the year and years to come as we approach our work in literacy, really looking closely at the curriculum, ensuring that we have alignment, ensuring that what we do within the world of literacy is connecting to the other content areas, because we know children also develop as readers in social studies and science. So thinking about that alignment, PK-12 in actual literacy and English is important, but also across the content areas. MTSS, which we're talking a lot about, is really about ensuring that our core instruction is really, really strong, that children are receiving high quality, excellent instruction in every single classroom, and that our interventions are aligned. And that when children are working on goals, the instructional strategies and resources are aligned so we can move them more quickly through the progressions of their literacy development. As you know, Shirley and I are always working really closely with general ed and special ed alignment. So that is inclusive of curriculum writing, ensuring that our educators in general education and special education both have resources. That's a wonderful commitment in this district. I have had the experience, and I know colleagues in other places where there are general education curricular resources, and then the special education teachers run down the hall to borrow. That is not the case here. There's extreme alignment. We're also making sure that there's alignment with the professional learning. So through all the professional learning this year with the new instructional resource with HMH into reading and our high quality instructional literacy framework, our special educators have been in the room and at the table at the same time. We're also thinking about not just the capacity of our staff who's in the classroom teaching the children directly, but how do we grow our leaders' capacity so that they can lead for high quality instruction? That is sometimes overlooked in some places. It needs to be a very strong commitment here. The idea of student learning outcomes, we talk a lot at the table about how we're going to measure what will be the metrics of our programming. And so we'll be looking at metrics to talk about the quality of the curriculum, the actual implementation of a resource and instructional strategies like we discussed on Tuesday night, and actually student performance outcomes. Something that's really been a focus of mine since I've been in district is the idea of teacher voice in the work. It's incredibly important to ensure that that is something that's alive and well and is actually observable in our work, and stakeholder confidence. It's really important that families and our staff feel really good about the resources we're using, the strategies, and the outcomes we're having, that kids are ready for their next steps. So those are going to be the strategic priorities that really guide our work moving forward. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Falcone and Kristen Colonies. They're going to give you an overview of kind of quick update where we are pre-K 3, and then next steps and the structure we're setting up to ensure that the work is systemic.
Fabulous. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So continuing the thread of we're truly focused on building our teachers' professional capital, and you'll see that through line going throughout. There's been a focus on really looking and growing our understanding of our high quality literacy instructional framework. And we've really been doing that through systematic professional learning. As you know, we've had full days, we've truly optimized our early release days. And we've also had a series of professional learning experiences for our administrators so they can really be knowledgeable and fully support the implementation of our new programming. So when you look at K3, clearly, we've been focused on program implementation of HMH. During our early release days, our teachers have really taken this time to look at really digging into the new units, understanding the standards that are prioritized within the different units, because then that work really leads to, okay, what's being assessed? Where are our students falling? And it's a nice continuum of planning and intentionally, and then looking at how our students are doing through the use of analysis during our PLCs, looking at all of the data. We've also, with the new program and our instructional framework that you guys were introduced to last year, and looking at actualities of how are our schedules and time supporting program implementation. And that's something we'll continue to work on. One example is independent reading, right? And so with the new program implementation, we're still seeking to make sure that there's enough time to have our students independently read. And so we're still going to be continuing to look at time and program implementation. Also, again, one of the things you'll hear us talking about as we go forward is we have a lot of assessments that we were previously using. And then we also have a new series of assessments that come with our new program. And so one of the big things that you'll hear us continually talking about as we go throughout the year is really conducting an assessment audit so that we really are implementing the right assessments to give us the right information. And so we'll continue to talk about that as we proceed. Our 4th and 5th grade teachers also have been focused on high quality literacy instruction, but their work has been really digging in through the lens of grammar and syntax instruction and digging into those standards and really growing that learning and understanding, and also looking at how do we look at pre and post assessments and growth trajectories over time. And in doing so, really looking at setting student goals from a strengths-based mindset. And so that's really been the work. And then, as you know, Kristen and I are collaborating extensively on taking kind of what we've been doing in K3 with program implementation and our instructional framework. And then we're going to be moving into what happens next in 4 or 5. I'll turn it over to Kristen.
Thank you. Good morning. So we've got some next steps lined out for you here, but we've already jumped into them. And we're really excited about building that coherent literacy system across the district. Our first step was to develop our teams through a 3-tiered approach. You'll hear from us over and over again this word coherence, and it really is something that is vital for us to have coherence across the district and across the building, involving the voices of our educators throughout that process. is essential in building the confidence of our literacy work. And so you'll see these three, there we go, are three committees that work at different scales to ensure that alignment. Our district leadership team provides a systemic leadership, developing our PK-12 literacy vision, aligning curriculum and instruction expectations, setting priorities for those professional development and professional learning opportunities. And this team includes Dr. Fedigan, Dr. Falcone, and myself, as well as Shirley Klein, Scott McCarthy, elementary principals Natasha Torrey and Paula Bleakley, and MMS principal Keith Willis. The PK-12 Literacy Steering Committee focuses on vertical coherence. This committee is representative of the literacy voices across the entire district, the so-called guardians of this work, if you will. Because it includes educators from elementary and secondary levels, as well as administrators, this group can both reflect and provide feedback to our core review team, which I'll explain in a moment, and share the core review team's work back to their buildings. The 3 to 6 literacy core review team takes the district's literacy vision and translates it into practice at the grade band level. This group is responsible for defining and aligning our Tier 1 practices, reviewing and piloting any curriculum resources, and providing recommendations to the district leadership team. Members include classroom teachers from grades 3 through 6, interventionists, SES representatives, and building leadership. Both the steering committee and the core review team recently met and have already proved the value of the district-wide process. I have to say it was really remarkable to see high school teachers having conversations with elementary school principals, to see 4th grade teachers and 3rd grade teachers collaborating with 6th grade teachers. It's an atypical opportunity, but it's something that is so valuable to this work. And their insights from the discussions that they've had have already been powerful drivers in the work that we've done. So we're really excited about those opportunities to bring these groups of educators together. Another major step in the development of our PK-12 literacy vision is looking at our vision itself. My apologies, looking at our vision itself. So essentially, we currently have 2 visions. We have one established for K through 5 and one established for 6 through 12. We need one that unifies the entire district if that's what we're aiming for here. So the leadership team merged these, and you can see our initial draft here. We brought this to the steering committee for study and feedback, and we've already made some revisions to what you see on the screen here. So I emphasize the word draft. The committee's feedback included attention to representing literacy practices across all disciplines, attention to different modes of communications to make sure all voices of students, regardless of what those voices might look like in their communication, be represented, and attention to both the joy and utility of language. So like I said, there's already a revision to this draft that you see here, and it will also continue to evolve as we do this work on our committees. When the core review team met this week, they began developing an instructional literacy framework for grades 4 through 5. This framework builds on the K through 3 framework, both in process and content. And our goal is to create a continuum of learning. Having staff from grades 3 through 6 on that committee really helps serve as a gateway at both ends of this work, making sure that we've got smooth transitions as the work is developed and implemented. Once we've established that framework, we'll begin an audit of our actual instructional practices, looking to see what our current practices do in relation to the vision and the framework we've established, and identifying any areas where we might need to adjust and strengthen as needed.
So to wrap up, Cass, do you mind going back to the to slide 5? Thank you so much. To just kind of translate this also really simply, that district literacy leadership team is constant and should always be in place. The PK-12 Literacy Steering Committee, which is directed and guided by the district leadership team, is also always in place because we always want to be looking at the big picture, 30,000 feet up, and the long game. It's that group on the right, the 3-6 group, that will change as our work develops. And so what's really important, and I just want to pause here for a minute, is that the reason why we're going back to 3 is we want to make sure that we're building upon the work and really connecting the work not because that'll strengthen the students' experiences year over year, right? If the teachers know what's going on year over year more closely. The other piece is branching into grade 6. Oftentimes in schools, we do K3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 12, and we naturally, unintentionally create gaps in instruction and learning. So you can imagine that as the work develops and evolves, the next step will be, we'll still have a literacy leadership team. We will always have a PK-12 steering committee to look at that big picture view and to provide feedback. The next group is going to be 5-9. Because we want to make sure that we're bringing the entire elementary school up into the middle grades and then stretching into the high school. So we believe that this model will be really supportive. And the only other thing I would mention about this is with the idea and the really exciting possibility of having instructional coaches. Instructional coaches will really support the work of bringing those grade level bands together and ensuring that there's a continuum, not only grade level to grade level, but level to level, elementary, middle, and high. So that's really an exciting potential. So as far as the continued work ahead, of course, as we discussed on Tuesday night, there's curriculum work that's happening. It's really important that we have resource alignment. I know from my very beginning conversations with Dr. Byrne, we're on the very same page with a resource is a resource. We need to make sure that that resource is aligned to curriculum that's written and working for our children in Darien. So making sure that there's alignment there is really important. The professional learning piece, again, is about strengthening tier 1 core instruction and really focusing on goal setting and small group instruction because that's where the differentiation happens. MTSS, we've been talking so much about that. Dr. Falcone has already indicated the work on the assessment audit. The only other thing I would mention there is we talked about Tuesday night about looking into a new approved universal screener. That's really important because again, that's about tier 1 and checking where all kids are. And we want to use a tool that's going to help us point to next steps in instruction. We're focusing a lot more on transitions as we've discussed at the board table and we'll continue to smooth those out. The data literacy piece will be an important part of our professional learning moving forward for teachers and leaders. And communication with families about student progress all along and our progress as a system to improve experiences for children as they move through. And so thank you for letting us talk about our exciting work.
All right, thank you for that. I mean, I have to say, I'm thrilled to see the long view being taken. And I love that you two are working so closely together with Amy. And this is what we should be doing, right? You should be the youngest to the oldest. And how do they communicate? And there shouldn't be barriers between the buildings and the levels. And that you're super smart to do the 3-6 and then the 5-9 eventually. I think that will really, really help. Because we've heard for years and years and years that 5 to 6 transition and then the 8 to 9 transition. So if that can minimize because of this, thank you. I'll open it up to other.
I have one question and one thought. On the 3-tier literacy advisory diagram, how do you think about the instructional coaches? Are they part of this in the future, or how do you think about that?
They would be a part of that in the future. They would actually function to support both the PK-12 Literacy Steering Committee, looking at the systemic work and the really tight grade level band work where we have people who are most expert who are teaching those grades. And certainly they'll be working so closely with Dr. Falcone, she'll be directly supervising their work.
Great, thank you. And then on the philosophy draft, which I tried to read quickly, one thing that I was thinking about as I was reading it that I wasn't sure was completely captured in here. Like, there's a lot of great thoughts, and I think very aligned with the district and our goals. I do think that like having some reference point to like the capabilities or the skill set that we are targeting, that's like a measurable objective for kids when they graduate, like, full mastery of the English language from a reading and writing perspective. Like, there should be something in there about that. Like, we need to have something that we're targeting. And I would think that that's part of our philosophy, right? Like, we want them to be able to, there's some outcome,
Like
some
their command
achievement
of
factor.
language.
Yeah, some command of what we're teaching them, that for every single student, we've got a goal in mind, and we're targeting that so that, everybody who's reading this as our philosophy knows this is what we're striving for.
Yeah,
That's good
to me,
feedback.
that's the last sentence of that
We can
second
make that
paragraph, the
clear.
targeted support when needed so that all learners develop as literate individuals. Like, I feel like that's the baseline, right? There's, you want to be more than literate, right? Yeah. Katie.
Yeah, Greg, thank you for bringing that up. I had notes on this too. That there are no metrics in this. And I think that the district has been doing a lot of work over the past couple of years to move away from the touchy-feely into the concrete. So I would like to see that reflected in here. One thing that stood out to me in connection with this is that, we talk about students being able to learn and interpret the evaluative layers of meaning, right? And a lot of this is written from the perspective of reading other people's work. And there's not as much about the need for students to be able to produce their own work. And honestly, that's the goal, right? Is for them to be able to contribute, not to just be learning from other people, but to be sharing their own knowledge. So I would love to see something in here about communicating effectively, because you can have great ideas. You could have ideas that could change the world. And if nobody else understands them, they're not going anywhere. So how do we make sure that our students can communicate in a way that others can understand them? Through grammar, through conventions, through spelling, through clarity. So I think this is a great start. And I love that you put it as a draft as well, because it should be iterative, right? We should be collaborating and refining. I did have another question about the advisory thing. Amy, I know you know this, and probably all of you do. I would love to see maybe a supplement, even if it's just to the board, about the numbers and names in here, just so that we can
We have
contextual. I know you do, but I didn't have time to. You mentioned a couple of people. I didn't get it all. I would love to, just for reference, to kind of understand how many people are working on this and how they're working together.
And how often are these teams meeting? Is this a quarterly thing? Is it like, how often? I mean, you guys are working together every day, but how often are these groups meeting?
So the leadership team is meeting about 6 or 7 times over the course of the year. And then each of the other 2 are meeting 4 to 5 times.
The steering committee
And they're
meets
staggered.
and
So
they
they're
meet,
building off of each other.
they meet much less frequently. That steering committee isn't doing like the nitty gritty work. It's more about coherence, big picture, and communication. So those are intended to be very quick meetings, and really more of like a feedback loop.
And to Katie's point, were people tapped to be on these committees, or did you ask who would want to be part of it?
A little bit of both.
Okay.
Can I?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Shirley.
So I was hoping for a question, but it's not a question, okay? But it's just a response to that. To the steering committee, and earlier when you spoke about the steering committee, I always look for the opportunity to go back to all children or students who are in general education and what are we doing? The design of the steering committee really does capture that. So I was hoping there'd be a question on the outcomes, so I'll give an answer without a question if that's okay. So everyone spoke about differentiation, and we really did begin the entire conversation about literacy when we looked through the understanding of looking for interreading, when we went through the different opportunities for choosing a program to introduce. When we went through OG that started in general education, and then we did our first cohort of teachers this year. The other piece is I was thinking, as the presentation was going on, of what does it really look like? So I want to go back to writing, okay? That always comes up. And when I was thinking about that, when we look at writing, I'll just give an example. When you look at writing, what we're looking at, not just grammar and syntax, and I love that you were focusing on that in grades, in the upper 4 and 5, or 3, 4, and 5, and 6. How do we really differentiate? So I'm going to take the opportunity just for a quick example. So when they said looking at different learners, so children with learning differences, to Katie's point earlier, very often may have strengths in mathematics, but not in literacy. And what we look at is what can I do? So if I'm teaching writing, I'll start using technology. So a student would maybe use a graphic organizer and know what is the plot, what is the thing, who are the characters, and can dictate a full, robust story without having to write it, because they may not have that skill yet of being able to do that, but really moving into, I can tell a really valuable story with voice, with everything I need. I could dictate it. I can have it transcribed for me, and then I can learn what it looks like and try to really model that and do that. And we are finally moving into that where all teachers have that skill of what to do within the class. You don't need to be in a special room. You don't need to be specially designed. You can start using those opportunities. So I think differentiation, what it looks like in the classroom, is really about finding opportunities for literacy, whether it's in reading, whether it's in writing, whether it's in the aspects of writing, not just meaning, but syntax and grammar, of being able to use their voice, dictate it, use an outline, and start to learn writing skills by doing that, by going to the first modality. So I think that's something that having going back to a systematic leadership group, having people from SESS department, having everyone in the not lower, but as they go into the kind of scaffolding down, starting to really see how all students can become writers and readers.
Thanks, Shirley.
Yeah, so I just want to, I think your points, we jotted them down because I appreciate the feedback. This is a start, and we really started with the why, right? So it really was that kind of like high level. The next step would be to come up with program goals, which are going to get into more of the measurable outcomes that we want for our kids, and they'll stem from this like why. So just that next step, I think will give you a little bit more of what you're seeking.
So percolating in my mind is what is your time frame for, you're collecting people's feedback now.
Yep.
When do you think we should expect to see potential changes in whether it's scope or sequence or whatever that might be?
In regard to this or
Just in
program?
general, just in literacy.
Okay, so our next step would be at the end of this year, we would have developed the framework, right? For 4 or 5. Then what we would do is we're going to be taking that framework, analyzing, okay, where do we have gaps? Where do we, for our next program evaluation, right? So what do we want for our 4th and 5th grade in regard to programming based on this framework? And then we would be recommending pilots potentially for next year. And so at that time, depending, there's only so many directions we would go at this time based on where we are in K3, but we would then pilot next year, coming out of next year with a full, implementation for our grades 4 to 5, all at the same time, working with Kristen, figuring out, okay, that the 5th to 6th grade transition, what do we need to do? And we've actually got learning walks kind of set up so that we can look at, she can come down to some 5th grade, I'm going to be going up to 6th grade, and we'll be looking at all of this in practice in the classrooms.
Okay, great, thank you. Other questions? John, do you have any questions? Nope.
I just wanted to talk
I'm
about.
all good. Thank you. Sorry. Struggling with the mute button.
I just wanted to talk about the last slide before the discussion, the continued work. I think that there is so much great content going on in here, and this is really what I see as like a holistic look at this, which is so important, from looking at obviously our curriculum and our resources and our professional learning, but how does everything fit in together between our tiers of support and those assessments and those screeners? I can't tell you how grateful I am that we're looking at that so seriously, because those are going to be our early identifiers, right? Those are going to be our concrete measures where we're able to track students over time, and we're able to see maybe someone didn't show up with a deficiency early on, but somewhere along the lines they had a gap. And tying that into the dashboard to be able to see it clearly, and then communicating back with families. Like, these are all areas that I think that the district needs to improve on. And I'm so glad that you guys are identifying them specifically. Our students are really, really going to benefit from this.
Yeah, and that is the work, is putting all of those pieces together. We talk about, I say consistency and alignment all the time.
Mm-hmm.
The work of all of these groups is all about consistency and alignment. The curriculum, the instruction, the assessment, they all have to be aligned and working well together.
Yeah, it's really, an integration, right? That we're not doing any of these fun things in silos, that we're looking for that intersectionality, and then we're working with those students and those families. So thank you for pulling that together.
Thank you for noticing that. And this work you should see really braided into the MTSS work.
Mm-hmm.
It should start to sound like the same story.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody. This was great. I do not see anybody in public comment, so I'll call for a motion to adjourn. Greg, Katie?